The night sky above Iowa sparkled with thousands of stars. 8-year-old Ethan Miller lay on his back in the dewy grass of his backyard, counting the constellations he recognized. His small fingers traced invisible lines between the stars as crickets chirped in the darkness around him. "Ethan, it's getting late," his mother Linda called from the back porch. The yellow light from the kitchen window cast her silhouette against the farmhouse. "Just 5 more minutes, Mom," Ethan pleaded, not taking his eyes off the sky. "I'm trying to find Cassiopeia." Linda smiled and checked her watch. 5 minutes. Then bed, school tomorrow. Ethan nodded, his attention already back to the stars. What his mother didn't know was that Ethan wasn't just stargazing for fun. For weeks now, strange dreams had filled his nights. Dreams of numbers and patterns among the stars that seemed to whisper secrets to him. During the day, he found himself drawing these patterns in his notebook, calculating distances and relationships he somehow knew but couldn't explain. His teacher had called his parents last week after finding pages of complex equations in his math notebook. Equations that no 8-year-old should understand, let alone create. His father Frank had seemed worried. His mother, a scientist at the research facility 30 miles away, had been fascinated. A shooting star streaked across the sky, and Ethan closed his eyes to make a wish. When he opened them, the shooting star had stopped moving. It hung in the sky, glowing brighter. That wasn't a shooting star. The light grew larger, descending toward the cornfield behind their property. Ethan sat up, heart racing with excitement rather than fear. Something about the light felt familiar, like it was connected to his dreams. He glanced back at the house. The kitchen light was off now. His parents were probably getting ready for bed. Ethan made a quick decision. He stood up and ran toward the cornfield, his small sneakers leaving footprints in the soft earth. The cornfield rustled in the night breeze as Ethan pushed between the tall stalks. The light grew brighter between the rows of corn ahead of him. It pulsed with colors he had never seen before, colors that shouldn't exist, yet somehow he recognized them from his dreams. He broke through into a small clearing where the corn had been flattened. In the center hovered a metallic object about the size of his dad's pickup truck. It made no sound, but the air around it shimmered like heat waves on summer asphalt. Ethan should have been scared. Any normal kid would have run screaming back to the house, but something about the object felt right to him, like a math problem finally making sense. A seam appeared in the side of the object. Light spilled out as a ramp extended to the ground. A figure appeared in the doorway, tall and thin with many joints in its limbs. Its skin glimmered like oil on water. "Subject located," the figure said in a voice that sounded like several people talking at once. Brainwave pattern confirmed. 2 more figures emerged behind the first. They moved with liquid grace down the ramp. Ethan stood perfectly still, watching them approach. In his mind, equations formed spontaneously, describing their movement, their biology, even the technology of their ship. "Hello," Ethan said simply. "I've been waiting for you, I think." The beings stopped, looking at each other with large, faceted eyes that reflected the moonlight. "The specimen speaks directly to us," one said. "Unusual behavior." "I'm not a specimen," Ethan replied. "My name is Ethan Miller." The beings made a series of clicking sounds that Ethan somehow understood as surprise. "The brainwave patterns were accurate," the tallest being said. "This one is different. Bring it aboard quickly before the adults detect our presence." Something in Ethan's mind warned him to run, but his curiosity was stronger. These beings knew about the numbers in his head. They might have answers. One of the beings approached, holding what looked like a small silver ball. It flashed with a blue light, and Ethan felt his muscles freeze. He couldn't move, couldn't even blink. Only his mind remained active, racing with calculations and probabilities. "Transport the specimen to the ship," the leader commanded. "The Jarelian Science Division will be pleased. This is the most promising subject we have located in a full rotation." The aliens lifted Ethan effortlessly, carrying his paralyzed body toward the ramp. As they did, Ethan noticed a fine metallic dust falling from their skin, sparkling in the moonlight. Inside the ship, everything was curves and flowing surfaces. No hard edges or straight lines. The walls pulsed with light that seemed alive. The beings placed Ethan on a platform that molded itself to his body. "Initiate stasis for hyperspace transit," the leader ordered. "The eternal discovery awaits our return." A dome of light formed over Ethan. As it closed around him, he finally felt fear rising in his chest. He thought of his parents. They would wake up tomorrow and find him gone. Would they ever know what happened to him? With his last moment of consciousness, Ethan focused all his mental energy on sending a message, not knowing if anyone would receive. The numbers in his head aligned into a pattern, a location, a map of where he was being taken. Then, darkness took him. Back at the Miller house, Linda sat bolt upright in bed, a scream caught in her throat. "Ethan!" she gasped. Frank stirred beside her. "What's wrong?" "Something's happened to Ethan," Linda said, already throwing off the covers. "I don't know how I know, but I do." They rushed to Ethan's room. The bed was empty, untouched. In the backyard, they found only his telescope and notebook, open to a page filled with strange equations and a crude drawing of a ship among the stars. By morning, police cars lined the driveway of the Miller farm. Officers searched the fields with dogs while Linda clutched Ethan's notebook, trying to make sense of the equations. "Mrs. Miller?" A woman in a dark suit approached, showing identification. "I'm Agent Diane Porter. May I see that notebook?" Linda handed it over reluctantly. Agent Porter flipped through the pages, her expression growing increasingly concerned. "How long has your son been drawing these?" she asked. "A few weeks," Frank answered. "What does it mean? Do you know something about our son?" Agent Porter closed the notebook carefully. "Mr. and Mrs. Miller, I need you to come with me. There's something you should know." She lowered her voice. "Your son isn't the first." As they followed Agent Porter to her car, Linda looked up at the morning sky, still showing a few fading stars. Somewhere up there, beyond the blue, her son was traveling farther away with each passing second. But she made a silent promise to the universe. This wasn't the end. They would find him. They would bring him home. On the Jurelian ship entering hyperspace, Ethan Miller slept in stasis, unaware that the empire that had captured him had just made the biggest mistake in their 1,000-year history of scientific research. They hadn't captured an ordinary human child. They had captured the key to their own undoing. Ethan woke up slowly. His head felt fuzzy, like he had slept too long. He kept his eyes closed and tried to remember where he was. Not in his bed at home. The surface beneath him curved to fit his body perfectly. The air smelled different too, clean but with a strange metallic tang. Then it all came back to him. The strange light in the cornfield. The tall beings with too many joints. The ship. He opened his eyes and looked around. He was in a small room with curved walls that glowed with a soft blue light. No windows. No doors that he could see. Just smooth, flowing surfaces that seemed alive somehow. "Subject is conscious," a voice said from nowhere. "Alert Chief Scientist Zex Terral." Ethan sat up, surprised to find he could move again. "Hello?" he called out. "Can you hear me?" A section of the wall rippled and turned transparent. On the other side stood one of the tall beings from the cornfield, watching him with large, faceted eyes. Next to it stood a smaller being with purple-tinged skin. "I am Kylith," the smaller being said. Its mouth didn't move, but Ethan heard the words in his mind. "Junior researcher assigned to human specimen." "I'm not a specimen," Ethan said. "My name is Ethan Miller. I'm 8 years old." The beings looked at each other, their skin shifting color slightly. "The specimen identifies itself," Kylith said. "Noted. The chief scientist will arrive shortly to begin testing." "Testing?" Ethan asked. "What kind of testing? Where am I?" "You are aboard the research vessel Eternal Discovery," Kylith replied. "You are now property of the Jurelian Empire. The testing will determine your value to our scientific understanding." Ethan frowned. He didn't like being called property, but his curiosity was stronger than his fear. He looked around the room again, noticing patterns in the wall's glow that reminded him of the equations in his dreams. Your ship uses hyperdimensional mathematics for propulsion, Ethan said without thinking. The patterns in your walls are navigation formulas. The purple skin of Kylith turned a bright yellow. How does the specimen know this? Humans do not possess this knowledge. Before Ethan could answer, the wall rippled again, and a much taller being entered the room. This one had deep blue skin with gold markings and wore a fitted garment that seemed to shift and change with each movement. I am Chief Scientist Zex Taral, the being announced. You will submit to our testing, human child. Resistance is pointless. Ethan looked up at the tall alien. Will the tests hurt? The question seemed to confuse Zex Taral. Pain is irrelevant to scientific progress, but no. The initial tests are non-invasive. We must assess your baseline capabilities before proceeding to more advanced examinations. A panel opened in the wall, and a hovering tray floated in carrying what looked like a helmet made of translucent material. Zex Taral took it and approached Ethan. This will read your brain patterns, the scientist explained. Sit still. Ethan allowed the helmet to be placed on his head. Immediately, his mind was filled with symbols and equations. He could feel the machine scanning his thoughts, but strangely, he could also sense the machine's workings. It was as if his mind was flowing in both directions, being read and reading at the same time. Incredible, Zex Taral said, watching a display that had appeared on the wall. The neural activity is far beyond normal human parameters. Kylith, record this. The specimen's brain shows activity in regions that should be dormant in human children. I told you my name is Ethan, the boy said calmly. And I can understand the data you're collecting. You're measuring my theta waves wrong. Your baseline, for humans, is outdated. Both aliens stared at him. Zex Taral's skin darkened to a deep navy blue. Impossible, the chief scientist said. How can you interpret our measurements? The data is encoded in Jarelian mathematical language. Ethan shrugged. It makes sense to me, like reading a book. Zex Taral turned to Kylith. Alert Admiral Dorvan. This specimen is far more valuable than we anticipated. Begin the advanced testing immediately. Over the next several hours, Ethan was subjected to a series of increasingly complex tests. They showed him patterns and asked him to complete them. They gave him puzzles that shifted and changed as he solved them. They showed him symbols from different alien languages and asked him to find the connections. To the scientist's growing amazement, Ethan completed every test with ease. What should have taken weeks to progress through, he finished in a single day. Each time they increased the difficulty, expecting to find his limit, he adapted and improved. This is unprecedented, Zex Taral said to Kylith as they watched Ethan solve a problem that had stumped their most advanced AI systems for years. The human child's mind seems to expand to meet each challenge. Perhaps we should provide sustenance, Kylith suggested. The specimen has been working for many hours without rest or food. Zex Taral considered this. Yes, we must maintain optimal conditions for the specimen, provide appropriate human nutrients. A section of the wall opened and a tray floated in with what looked like colored cubes and a container of water. Ethan looked at it suspiciously. This is food? He asked. Synthesized to meet human nutritional requirements, Kylith explained. It will sustain you. Ethan took a cautious bite of a blue cube. It tasted like nothing he'd ever eaten before, but not unpleasant. He ate slowly, using the break to look more carefully around the room. When can I go home? He asked. Zex Taral made a sound that might have been laughter. You will not return to Earth, human child. You belong to the Empire now. Your mind is too valuable to waste on such a primitive planet. Ethan felt a flash of anger but kept his face calm. Something told him not to show his emotions to these beings. I want to see more of your ship, he said instead. That is not permitted, Zex Taral replied. But your living conditions will be improved if you continue to perform well in our tests. After Ethan finished eating, they placed the helmet on his head again. This time they connected it to a larger system. This will map your neural pathways more completely, Zex Taral explained. Remain still. As the machine powered up, Ethan felt a strange sensation. The connection went beyond just reading his brain. It created a link to the ship's systems. Without fully understanding how, Ethan found his mind touching the ship's computer network. It was like diving into an ocean of data. Streams of information flowed all around him. Ship functions, research data, communication channels, all accessible. And somehow, Ethan could understand it all. While the scientists watched their displays, unaware of what was happening, Ethan's mind silently explored the ship's systems. He found the navigation controls, the personnel files, the research archives, and he found something else. Records of other humans who had been taken. Ethan was not the first. But from what he could see in the data, he was different from the others. His brain was doing things the Jurelians had never seen before. As the scan ended and they removed the helmet, Ethan kept his face blank. He wouldn't let them know what he had discovered or what he now understood. They thought they had captured a specimen. They didn't realize they had invited a storm into their ship. "Tomorrow," Zexaterral announced, "we transfer to the Imperial Zenith. Admiral Dorvan and Emperor Zorthul will want to see this specimen personally." Ethan lay back on the curved surface as the aliens left the room. The wall sealed behind them, leaving him alone with his thoughts and his newfound connection to the ship that they didn't know about. He closed his eyes, pretending to sleep. But his mind was racing, swimming through the digital ocean of the ship's systems, learning, planning. They would regret taking him from his home. He would make sure of that. The transfer to the Imperial Zenith was nothing like Ethan expected. He thought they would move him to another room or maybe another small ship. Instead, when the wall of his chamber dissolved, he found himself staring at a view that took his breath away. The docking bay of the Imperial Zenith stretched before him, so vast he couldn't see the far end. Hundreds of ships of different sizes and shapes filled the space. Thousands of aliens moved around them like ants in a colony. The ceiling was so high it disappeared into shadows. "Move, specimen," Guard Commander Vril ordered, prodding Ethan forward with something that looked like a short, glowing stick. Ethan had learned that Vril was in charge of security and clearly didn't like humans. Ethan walked carefully down the ramp from the Eternal Discovery. His legs felt weak after days of lying down during tests. Chief Scientist Zex Terral and Junior Researcher Kyleth followed behind him. "The Emperor awaits," Zex Terral said. "This is a great honor, human. Few specimens ever meet Emperor Zorthul in person." Ethan didn't answer. Since discovering his connection to the ship's computer, he had spent every moment when they thought he was sleeping to explore the Jurelian Empire's data network. He now knew more about their civilization than they realized. And he had found something else too. Evidence of other humans aboard this massive ship. They led him through gleaming corridors filled with aliens of various colors and sizes. Some had 6 limbs instead of 4. Others floated instead of walked. All of them stopped and stared as Ethan passed by. Human specimens were kept in the research levels, never brought to the main decks. After walking for what felt like hours, they reached a massive door decorated with swirling patterns that reminded Ethan of the equations in his dreams. The door slid open silently, revealing a circular room with a raised platform in the center. "Enter," a deep voice commanded from within. Ethan stepped into the Emperor's chamber. The room was dimly lit, with strange plants growing along the walls. In the center, on the raised platform, sat a being larger than any Jurelian Ethan had seen so far. Emperor Zorthul's skin was a deep crimson with gold patterns that shifted constantly. He had 4 arms and wore a flowing robe that seemed to be made of living material. "So this is the human child who has impressed my scientists," the Emperor said, his voice echoing in Ethan's mind. "Approach, small one." Ethan walked forward, keeping his face calm despite his racing heart. The Emperor's eyes were like pools of liquid gold, with no pupils or whites. "Your Radiance," Zexaterral bowed deeply. "This specimen has demonstrated unprecedented mental abilities. It solves our most complex mathematical problems with ease. It understands our language without training, and its brain activity suggests potential for abilities we have not yet tested. The Emperor leaned forward, studying Ethan closely. "Does it speak?" "My name is Ethan," he said clearly. "Not it or specimen. I am a person." The Emperor's skin rippled with color. "Interesting. It has spirit." He turned to Zexteril. "What do you recommend for further study?" "With your permission, we would like to begin testing its hyperdimensional awareness," Zexteril replied. "And perhaps allow interaction with the other human specimen in our possession." Ethan's ears perked up at this. "Other human? Who?" The Emperor seemed amused by Ethan's question. "Yes, bring the older one. I wish to see them together." A side door opened and 2 guards entered, bringing with them a tall, thin man with gray hair and tired eyes. He wore a simple gray tunic similar to Ethan's. The man looked up and froze when he saw Ethan. "A child?" he whispered. "They've taken a child now?" "Dr. Alan Wright," the Emperor said. "Meet our newest acquisition. It seems to have abilities that even you lack." The man named Alan Wright approached Ethan slowly. "Hello, son. How long have you been here?" "A few days, I think," Ethan replied. "They took me from Iowa." Dr. Wright nodded sadly. "They took me from the International Space Station 5 years ago. I'm a physicist. Or was." Ethan studied the older man. He looked tired and defeated, but there was still kindness in his eyes. "Enough reunion," the Emperor interrupted. "Zexteril, proceed with the joint testing. I want to see how they interact with the hyperspace navigation problem." The guards brought forth a floating platform with what looked like a glowing cube on it. The cube constantly shifted shape, never settling on one form. "This is a model of Hyperspace Junction ZB7, Zexteril explained. "Our navigators have been unable to plot a stable course through it for centuries. Dr. Wright has been working on it for 2 Earth years without success." Dr. Wright sighed. "It's impossible. The mathematics don't work in 3 dimensions." Ethan stepped closer to the cube, fascinated by its shifting form. As he watched it, equations began forming in his mind, just like in his dreams back on Earth. But now he understood them. "It's not 3-dimensional," Ethan said softly. "It's a 5-dimensional problem." Dr. Wright looked at him in surprise. 5 dimensions? That's not possible." "It is," Ethan insisted. "Look at the pattern shifts. They're not random." He pointed to the cube. "May I touch it?" Zexteril looked to the Emperor, who nodded. Ethan placed his small hands on the cube. Immediately, the shifting slowed. The cube began to stabilize into a complex geometric shape. "Remarkable," Zexteril whispered. "The specimen is affecting the model directly." Ethan closed his eyes, seeing the equations in his mind. His fingers moved across the surface of the cube, making small adjustments. The shape continued to change until it settled into a perfect, stable form that glowed with a steady blue light. "There," Ethan said, opening his eyes. "That's the solution. You were trying to go through it, but you need to go around it using the 5th dimension." Everyone in the room stared at him in silence. Dr. Wright's mouth hung open. The Emperor rose from his seat. "Impossible," Zexteril finally said. "Our greatest minds have worked on this problem for generations." "The boy is correct," Dr. Wright said in astonishment after studying the stabilized cube. "It's a 5-dimensional solution. How did you see that, Ethan?" Before Ethan could answer, the Emperor spoke. "This human child is far more valuable than we realized. Zexteril, prepare the genetic testing chamber. I want to know what makes this one different." A chill ran down Ethan's spine. During his exploration of the ship's computer, he had seen records of genetic testing. The subjects rarely survived, intact. The Emperor turned his golden eyes on Ethan. "You will help us solve the greatest problems of the Empire, human child. You will be the key to our dominance of all 5 dimensions." "And if I don't want to help?" Ethan asked quietly. The Emperor's skin darkened to a deep blood red. "You have no choice." As guards moved forward to take Ethan away, a new figure entered the chamber. This one wore a uniform different from the others with silver markings. Your Radiance, the newcomer said, bowing. Lieutenant Sam Bailey reporting from the Outer Rim patrols. Ethan noticed something odd about this new alien. Its movements were different from the others, more human somehow, and when the lieutenant glanced at Ethan, there was a flash of something in its eyes. Recognition, perhaps even concern. Not now, Lieutenant. The Emperor waved dismissively. We are in the middle of important research. Of course, Your Radiance. Lieutenant Bailey backed away, but not before giving Ethan a barely perceptible nod. As the guards led Ethan and Dr. Wright from the chamber, Ethan's mind was racing. He had seen something in the ship's computer about infiltration concerns. Could Lieutenant Bailey be something other than Jarelian? Could there be allies aboard this ship? For the first time since his capture, Ethan felt a small spark of hope. He would need to be careful, but perhaps he wasn't as alone as he thought. 3 days had passed since Ethan's meeting with the Emperor. Each day brought more tests, each more invasive than the last. They scanned his brain while he solved increasingly complex problems. They took samples of his blood and skin. They measured his reactions to different stimuli. Through it all, Ethan remained calm on the outside while his mind worked constantly, searching for a way out. He now shared a larger cell with Dr. Wright. The older man had become a source of comfort and knowledge about their captors. They've never seen anyone like you, Ethan, Dr. Wright said quietly as they sat on their sleeping platforms. In 5 years, I've learned enough of their science to impress them, but what you do, it scares them. Why would they be scared of me? Ethan asked. I'm just a kid. Dr. Wright smiled sadly. Because you understand things their best minds cannot. The Jarelians believe they are the most intelligent species in the galaxy. You challenge that belief. Ethan looked down at his hands. I don't understand it myself. The numbers and patterns just make sense to me, like they're speaking to me. Before Dr. Wright could respond, the cell door slid open. Lieutenant Bailey stood there, alone. Exercise period, the lieutenant announced formally. This was new. They had never been allowed exercise before. As they walked down the corridor, Lieutenant Bailey kept a careful distance, his posture stiff and proper. But when they reached an empty section of hallway, the lieutenant suddenly changed. His movements became more natural, more human. Listen carefully, Lieutenant Bailey whispered, his voice now lacking the strange echo of Jarelian speech. I don't have much time. My name is Sam Bailey, United Earth Space Force. I've been undercover here for 3 years. Ethan and Dr. Wright stared at him in shock. You're human? Dr. Wright whispered. Modified to pass as Jarelian, Sam replied quickly. There are more like me. We've been tracking their activities, looking for ways to free captives and gather intelligence. How many humans have they taken? Ethan asked. Hundreds over the decades. Most for standard testing. But you, Ethan, you're different. The Emperor is obsessed with your abilities. He's ordered genetic sequencing to begin tomorrow. Dr. Wright's face paled. We need to get him out before that happens. That's the plan, Sam said. But we need help from inside. Ethan, the scientists say you can interface with their system somehow, is that true? Ethan nodded slowly. When they connect me to their computers for brain scans, I can see into their network. I can move through it. Sam's eyes widened. That's impossible. Their security protocols are based on 5-dimensional mathematics, Ethan interrupted. It just makes sense to me. Sam looked at Ethan with new understanding. Then you're exactly what we need. Tonight, during the sleep cycle, they'll scan you again. When they do, I need you to access the ship's security network and disable the locks on level B7. Can you do that? Ethan thought for a moment. I think so. But what's on level B7? More humans, Sam said grimly. And our way out of here. Later, that night as predicted, guards came to take Ethan for another scan. Dr. Wright watched helplessly as the boy was led away. In the lab, Chief Scientist Zexa Terrell prepared the scanning equipment personally. Tonight we map the special pathways. In your brain, he told Ethan. Tomorrow we begin genetic extraction. Ethan lay still as they placed the helmet on his head. As the machine powered up, he felt the familiar sensation of his mind connecting to the ship's systems. But this time, instead of just observing, he pushed deeper. It was like swimming in an ocean of light and numbers. Ethan moved through the network, careful to avoid detection. He found the security protocols for level B7 and studied them. They were complex but not impossible. With careful mental adjustments, he began to rewrite them. As he worked, he discovered something else, a way to access the ship's communication system. Acting on instinct, Ethan created a hidden backdoor, something he could use later. Unusual brain activity, Kyleth noted from a monitoring station. The patterns are shifting. Increase the scan intensity, Zex Terrell ordered. Ethan felt. The pressure in his mind increased, but he was almost done. With a final mental push, he changed the security codes for level B7 and withdrew from the system, leaving no trace of his work. Scan complete, Kyleth announced. Data collected. Return the specimen to its cell, Zex Terrell ordered, and prepare the genetic laboratory for tomorrow's procedure. Back in their cell, Ethan whispered to Dr. Wright, "It's done. Level B7 is unlocked." The older man squeezed his shoulder. "Good work. Now we wait." They didn't wait long. 2 hours into the sleep cycle, the lights in their cell flickered. The door slid open silently. Lieutenant Bailey stood there with 2 other disguised humans. "Quickly," Sam whispered. "We have 15 minutes before the security reset." They moved through darkened corridors, avoiding patrols. Sam led them down emergency stairwells rarely used by the Jurelians, who preferred gravity lifts. Finally, they reached level B7. The doors opened at their approach just as Ethan had programmed them to. Inside, they found a large chamber filled with holding cells. Each contained humans of different ages, all looking frightened and confused. "Listen, up," Sam announced to the captives. "We're breaking out. Follow us exactly. No questions, no noise." A young woman in a lab coat approached them. "Captain Rodriguez," she said to Sam, "we thought you were dead." "Later, Mary," Sam replied. "Get everyone moving. We're heading for the shuttle bay." Dr. Wright turned to Ethan. "How many people are here?" 27, Ethan answered somehow, knowing the exact number without counting. "And there's someone else you should meet." Ethan walked directly to a cell that held a teenage boy with dark hair. When the door opened, the boy stepped out cautiously. "You're like me," Ethan said simply. The teenager looked at him curiously. "I'm Charlie. How did you know?" "I can feel it," Ethan replied. "You can move things with your mind." Charlie looked surprised. "And you can see into computers. There are more like us. The aliens call us variants." Their conversation was interrupted by alarms suddenly blaring throughout the ship. "They've discovered the breakout," Sam shouted. "New plan, everyone to emergency pods now." The group rushed through the corridors as red lights flashed around them. Ahead, they could hear the heavy footsteps of guard units. "We're cut off from the shuttles," Mary Rodriguez said, checking a stolen communication device. Sam looked desperate. "The pods won't take us far enough to escape their pursuit ships." "I have an idea," Ethan said. "Get me to a command terminal." Without waiting for agreement, he ran to a wall panel and placed his hands on it. The panel recognized his touch from the previous scans and activated. Ethan closed his eyes, connecting to the ship again. This time, he wasn't careful or hidden. He plunged into the system like a diver into deep water, searching frantically. He found what he needed: control of the ship's communication array. "What are you doing?" Dr. Wright asked, watching anxious as Jurelian troops got closer. "Calling for help," Ethan replied, his eyes still closed. Through the ship's powerful transmitters, Ethan sent a message, not in words or normal signals, but in the same mathematical language of his dreams. He sent it toward Earth, hoping someone would understand. "We need to move now," Sam shouted as the first energy blast hit the wall near them. Ethan opened his eyes. 2 more seconds. He made one final adjustment in the system, then pulled away from the panel. "Done." They ran for the escape pods as the ship's internal defenses turned against its own guards. Lights failed, doors closed randomly, and gravity shifted in different sections. "What did you do?" Charlie asked as they squeezed into the last pod. Ethan smiled for the first time since his capture. I told the ship to get confused. As their pod blasted away from the Imperial zenith, they could see chaos through the viewports. The massive ship's systems were going haywire, with sections powering down and emergency protocols activating randomly. That won't hold them for long, Sam said grimly. And these pods don't have enough life support to reach any habitable system. They don't need to, Ethan replied calmly. Help is coming. As if on cue, the darkness of space around them lit up, with the arrival of a fleet of ships. They weren't Jarelian in design, they were human. How? Dr. Wright gasped. My parents, Ethan said simply. I knew they wouldn't give up looking for me. The rescue fleet surrounded the escape pods, creating a protective barrier between the humans and the now recovering Imperial zenith. The largest ship opened its docking bay, and tractor beams gently pulled the pods inside. Ethan was the first, one out when the pod doors opened. He looked around the busy hangar bay filled with uniformed personnel rushing about. It looked so normal, so human, after weeks of alien surroundings. Ethan! The voice cut through the noise. Ethan turned to see his mother running toward him. Linda Miller's face was thinner than he remembered, with dark circles under her eyes, but her smile was exactly the same. Mom! Ethan ran to her, throwing himself into her arms. She held him tight, tears streaming down her face. My brilliant boy. I knew we'd find you. Frank Miller joined them, wrapping his arms around both his wife and son. You're safe now, buddy. You're safe. For a moment, Ethan just enjoyed being held by his parents, but soon his mind returned to the danger that still loomed. Mom, Dad, the Empire is still after us, he said, pulling back. And there are other people who need help. His parents exchanged looks. We know, his father said. That's why we're here with the whole fleet. Ethan looked confused. But how? How did you find me? How did you get these ships? A new voice answered. That would be thanks to your equations, young man. A woman in a crisp uniform approached. Her insignia identified her as someone important. Ethan, this is President Nicole Howard, his mother explained. After you were taken, the government decoded your notebook. The equations you'd been drawing weren't random. They were coordinates, communications protocols, even Jarelian ship schematics. But I didn't know what I was writing. Ethan said. President Howard smiled. Sometimes the mind knows things the conscious self doesn't. Your brain was picking up signals from the Jarelians before they even took you. When you sent that mathematical message from the Empire's ship, our scientists recognized the pattern. Immediately. We need to get moving, Captain Rodriguez interrupted, approaching with Sam Bailey and the other rescued humans. The Imperial Zenith is powering up weapon systems. President Howard nodded. Get everyone to medical. We're jumping out of here in 3 minutes. As they hurried through the ship, Ethan noticed something odd about some of the technology around them. It wasn't purely human in design. This ship has alien tech, he said to his father. Frank nodded. After you were taken, we made contact with others who oppose the Empire. They've been helping us. They entered a large chamber where a group of distinctly non-human beings worked alongside humans at various stations. These aliens were taller and more slender than Jarelians, with pale blue skin and 4 arms. The Ashari, Dr. Wright explained, seeing Ethan's surprise. They've been fighting the Jarelian Empire for centuries. They helped build this fleet. One of the Ashari approached. This is the special one? It asked in perfect English. This is my son, Ethan, Linda answered proudly. The alien bowed slightly. I am Ambassador Tyrell. Your son's message contained more than a call for help. It included proof of what we have long suspected. The Jarelian Emperor is not what he seems. Before Ethan could ask what that meant, the ship shuddered. On the main view screen, the Imperial Zenith was firing upon them. Shields holding, someone called out. Hyperdrive ready. Wait, Ethan said suddenly. There's something important in the Emperor's chamber. Something I saw in the ship's data but couldn't access. We have to leave now, son, Frank said urgently. No, you don't understand. Ethan turned to Ambassador Tyrell. The Emperor is being controlled by something else. Something that's been hiding in their empire for thousands of years. The Ashari's eyes widened. The ancient parasite. Our legends speak of it. It's not a legend, Ethan insisted. I saw fragments of data. The real Jarelians aren't naturally cruel. They're being influenced by something that attached to their leadership centuries ago, something that feeds on fear and conflict. The ship rocked again under enemy fire. "We need to go," Captain Rodriguez shouted. "No," Charlie stepped forward, standing beside Ethan. "He's right. I could feel it too when they tested me. Something dark at the center of their empire." President Howard looked between the boys and the view screen showing the approaching Imperial ships. "What are you suggesting we do?" "Let me broadcast what I found," Ethan said, "to all Jarelian ships and colonies. They deserve to know the truth." After a tense moment, President Howard nodded. "Do it quickly." Ethan was led to a communication station. He placed his hands on the console and closed his eyes. Once again, his mind connected with the technology, but this time it was easier, as if the human Ashari hybrid system welcomed him. He found the hidden files he had glimpsed in the Imperial network and began broadcasting them throughout the galaxy. Images and data showing how the Emperor and his predecessors had been infected by a parasitic entity that thrived on conflict and fear. How it had slowly turned a once peaceful species into conquerors. On the view screen, they could see the Imperial Zenith suddenly stop firing. Other Jarelian ships also went still. "They're receiving the broadcast," Ambassador Tyrell said quietly. Suddenly a transmission came through. The face that appeared wasn't Emperor Zorthul, but a different Jarelian with simpler clothing. "This is High Council Member Vexmore," the alien said. "We have received your transmission and verified its contents. We have been deceived for generations. The parasite entity controls your Emperor and many in your high command," Ethan said, stepping into view of the transmission. "It's been using your people to expand its influence." "We are aware now," Vexmore replied. "A rebellion has already begun aboard the Imperial ships. Many of us have suspected something was wrong for years but could not name it. Over the next few hours, reports came in from across Jarelian space. The revelation had sparked an instant revolution. Ships' commanders were turning against the infected leadership. The Emperor himself was contained after a fierce battle on the Imperial Zenith." 1 week later, Ethan stood beside his parents as a peace treaty was signed between humans, Ashari, and the newly liberated Jarelians. The three species agreed to work together to ensure the parasitic entity was completely removed from the galaxy. "What happens now?" Ethan asked Ambassador Tyrell as the ceremony concluded. "Now we rebuild," the Ashari replied, "and learn from each other. Your species has much to offer the galaxy, young Ethan, especially those like you and the others with special gifts." Ethan looked across the room where Charlie and several other variants were talking with scientists from all three species. They were no longer specimens or test subjects. They were bridges between worlds. "Will there be more like us?" Ethan asked. His mother put her arm around him. "Dr. Collins believes that what you and Charlie can do represents the next step in human evolution. The abilities were always there in our DNA, just waiting for the right trigger." "And that trigger might have been the Jarelians themselves," his father added. "Their ships emit energy patterns that could have activated these dormant genes. They created what they feared most." President Howard approached their group. "Ethan, the Joint Council, has a proposal for you. We're establishing an academy for gifted individuals like yourself, human, Jarelian, and Ashari alike. We need someone who understands all three species to help lead it." Ethan looked up at his parents, who nodded encouragingly. "I'm just a kid," he said. "I still have a lot to learn." "We all do," Ambassador Tyrell replied. "That is the point. We will learn together." As Ethan looked out the viewport at the stars beyond, he realized his journey had only just begun. The same stars he had watched from his backyard in Iowa now represented not just distant suns but homes of friends and allies. The Galactic Empire had captured a human child, not knowing they were bringing home the key to their own transformation. They had sought a specimen and found instead a teacher. They had expected a subject and discovered a liberator. And somewhere in the vast darkness between the stars, Ethan knew there were other civilizations waiting to be discovered, other minds reaching out. The mathematical patterns in his dreams were calling to him again, but this time he wasn't afraid. This time he was ready to answer.